need Austin there to be like all freaking out. It's not as much fun when people aren't shouting hit what button at you. It's just not. It's not quite the same.
I think it's a fun group game.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Making the group decisions is fun, and it's noticeably bad because in episode 3, like I said, your decisions from the first episode and some from the second episode are starting to come back to haunt you. So you're like, oh crap, like I could really get myself killed here. This is not good.
You die, everybody dies. You still have to keep playing, so you're still gonna have a playable character. You can't lose the game. In the Game of Thrones game, you either win or you use a different character.
Telltale Games, A Game of Thrones. You gotta check it out, and you should definitely check out that Let's Play of Episode 1, Iron from Ice. We did. That was a fun little outing. Welcome back, everybody, to the Cast Beyond the Wall. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and we are presented by our partners here at We Got This Covered, and we're here to recap this week's episode of Game of Thrones, The House of Black and White. And you know, this episode really wasn't all that black and white when you break it down. We'll get into that in a moment. First, I want to introduce you to my co-host in the great state of Nevada. Sir, introduce yourself.
Daniel Stahl.
And my other co-host in the lowly desert of Arizona,
Austin Lucari.
And we're really fired up to talk about this week's episode of Game of Thrones. And this was a jam-packed episode, guys, I have to say. Lots of stuff going on, lots of great. I think this episode really was getting into the meat of what Game of Thrones is about. Before we delve into the episode this week, in this week's episode, Cersei sends Jaime on a diplomatic mission. I just want to point out diplomatic missions out there in the real world, Game of Thrones world especially, don't tend to work out so well. Need those Balthans, remember? I wanted to ask you guys if you had any favorite diplomatic missions from a TV show or a movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably an obvious one, but I'm going to go with it. And that's got to be the first scene of episode 1 when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon go on a diplomatic mission and end up murdering everybody.
You were right about one thing, Master. The negotiations were short.
That's my favorite type of diplomatic mission, full of action.
No negotiations. No, that was great. Star Wars has a long history of great diplomatic missions, right? I like how the Jedi are like supposed to be these diplomats that go around keeping peace, and every single time it ends up with them cutting dudes in half. Every single time. My favorite diplomatic mission is in the TV show Lost, where Locke goes to like faux join the others, right? He goes in, infiltrates their camp, infiltrates quote unquote, and he starts to live with them. He like Jon Snows them, okay? He starts living with them. He doesn't have sex with any of them, but he's living with them. Him and Ben, they have a bromance going on there. Might as well be sex with them, okay? So he's flirting with the enemy. He leaves the Losties on the beach behind, and then what does he get for it? He gets his deadbeat con artist dad. I mean, it was kind of the short of his stick. But it was a very interesting diplomatic mission because eventually he ended up taking over the others for himself as their leader. So clearly the strategy worked out.
You don't know who you're dealing with. Don't ever tell me what I can't do, ever!
Does Tropic Thunder count as diplomatic mission? That's going to be my favorite diplomatic mission is when I don't even remember his name. Robert Downey Jr.'s black character,
Kirk Lazarus,
tries to convince them that he's a rice paddy farmer and he has a cow and everything goes crazy.
And then he reveals his true loyalties.
Here's my motherfucking farm! I'm a land farmer, motherfucker!
That's
my favorite diplomatic mission.
That's more of an infiltration mission, but I'll take it because it's so funny. But diplomacy, America, that's how we do it. We're Jedi style. We kill people. Yeah, America. Okay, that was probably
expect Jaime Lannister to go on a similar diplomatic mission.
Yeah, well, his diplomatic mission is definitely going to end up just as effective as the Jedi. I guarantee you, if not more.
Yeah, he went and got Bronn, so
bromance of the century, right there. They thought Tyrion, Bronn, great team up. No, they haven't even seen the magic happen yet. All right, guys, that was a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and move into our kind of little mini review of the episode, kind of give some of our general thoughts about it before we go to do a scene-by-scene breakdown here. Austin, what did you think of this week's episode?
Once again, I say this every week, but it was a great episode. We got to see a lot of storylines kind of start back up. Last week was kind of just, hey, remember all these characters that you used to have or that we used to watch? So this week we actually got to see some storylines move forward and really you get introduced to some new characters and all of that. So it was pretty cool to see all that. There was only one storyline that was a little disappointing for me, and we'll get into that later. But it's just because it feels like it's dragging right now. But it's probably the point. But Daniel, what'd you think?
I really liked this episode a lot. I thought it started getting the wheels turning and some of the storylines that we're going to be seeing this season. And so I was really excited about it. I especially liked particular scenes. I really liked some of the conversations that took place, and the characters are moving forward, and either good or bad. And I really enjoyed this episode a lot, actually.
Well, I thought there was a lot of great surprises in this episode, to be honest with you. A number, again, some more breaks from the books and some new little story plot threads there that I thought were great. The ball was definitely rolling a lot faster than it was last week. And I thought last week's episode was a pretty decent, was actually, I mean, as we recall last week, I thought it was a pretty strong opener. But this episode definitely felt like there was starting to build some more momentum. I mean, we're still setting the pieces into place still for where things are going to be going the next season or two. But I thought this was a strong second episode. Almost, honestly, as much as I actually enjoyed every storyline going on here, I almost think it was almost a little too packed. And when I say that is there was a lot going on. It was a lot. All of it great. All of it really, really great. Personal opinion. But there's that last scene with Arya that I thought when it ended, I was like, okay, end of episode. And then there was an entire other storyline we went back to after that, and I was like, oh, okay. Not that, and that storyline was great. I just thought maybe the placement was a little weird, but I can't complain. All great story, really, really great storylines. So it seems like we all enjoyed it, and it was definitely a strong follow up to the season premiere.
A longer episode by Game of Thrones standards, I think.
All right, so guys, let's go ahead and recap this week's episode. The House of Black and White.
Oberyn is dead.
You don't have to remind me.
The House of Black and White. This is where you'll find the man you seek. It's a threat.
I will burn their cities to the ground if they touch her.
All they understand is blood.
Little fun detail we forgot to mention. But you noticed Game of Thrones opening is back, and last week we went back to Pentos. No Pentos this week. This week, no Pentos. But what most noticeably, the fun little detail I noticed is we went back to Winterfell and it's not on fire. Instead, the Wolf Sigil has been replaced by the Bolton Sigil, and I feel like that house has just been raped and pillaged. I mean, look at that. It's not sad. Isn't that a sad sight to see?
I like to think that's a short-lived thing. We'll see, though.
Whatever happened, there will always be a Stark and a Winterfell tier. We've got a lot to talk about this week, guys, so we'll go ahead and move on into it. First off, we're going to kick things off big. We're going to go big. We're going to go with one of my favorite. Two of the plot threads this week I thought were outstanding. We'll start with one of them. Let's go to the wall.
To the wall.
There's a cute little scene here where we get to catch up with Shireen, that is Stannis' daughter, as she's teaching Gilly how to read. Normally, I probably wouldn't even mention this scene, but two things. One, Shireen's still on the show, which is really cool. We kind of mentioned last week they're keeping her around for some reason. And the fact that they continue to bring her up in this episode kind of hints that this character is going to do something at some point, I guess. I don't know. It's just really weird they keep bringing her up. It's such a small character. Maybe it's their way to humanize Stannis. I'm not really sure. But most notably, that she had a conversation with Gilly about grayscale, which, again, normally I'd say, no big deal, right? But grayscale, they go on a lot about the grayscale, and that's the disease that's covering half her face, right? And I don't know. Did you guys make anything of this conversation? I'm wondering if they're not trying to set up this grayscale because it's going to be a big deal later.
It ends up being something relevant to Stannis' army. Maybe he has an outbreak, some sort of plague or something.
Oh, dude, that'd be awful.
Yeah, I have no idea. I felt like it was a conversation less about the grayscale and more just trying to keep Stannis' daughter in the conversation because she seems like she's going to have a big role in something, which I predict is going to have to do with Davos' downfall. I think Davos is going to get killed, and it's going to have something to do with that girl.
Oh, not Davos. Not Davos. No, he loves Davos. Or she loves Davos. Come on.
Yeah, he's going to die, protecting her from something.
Oh, man. Don't say that. Davos, by the way, is kind of been on the back burner this season. I mean, we're only 2 episodes in, but...
Trying to soften the blow, Caleb.
Trying to soften the blow.
Yeah, I don't think he said anything. He's been in scenes, but he's just been standing there in the back. in scenes.
No,
He's
he
never
says-
actually said anything.
He says the same thing he says every time. This is Stannis Baratheon, one true ruler of Westeros. Because,
Look at my gimpy hand.
Yeah. And then Stannis says, "You want to know how just I am? Look at his hand." Every time. Listen, this is Game of Thrones. If they're gonna kill him off, they're gonna make it like they're gonna build up for him first.
They're going off book, Caleb.
Going off book.
From now on, people are just going to stop dropping like flies.
Well, what I got out of that conversation was that Gilly had brought up the only two people she'd ever known with it had died fairly quickly afterwards, and she has not. She said that a lot of people had tried a lot of different things to cure her when she was younger, and whatever happened worked. I don't know if maybe Melisandre played a role in that or what, but
Yeah.
that's kind of what I got from that conversation.
That's an interesting thought. I didn't think about that
I didn't think of
before,
it either.
but Melisandre very easily could have been what cured her.
And maybe that's why Stannis is willing to work with her.
That would make that relationship significantly more interesting and viable if that were the case.
I have no idea, but it's just something I thought about.
Well, no, it would make
Oh,
sense
that's a
that
good thought.
it would. I think it's a great thought, Daniel, because that would give Stannis a reason. First off, it give her a reason to be there, because we never really got an explanation for why she was at Dragonstone in the first place. She just was there. Remember the first time we saw her, she was burning the idols on the beach, and she was just there. We never really got an explanation for why she was there, where she was coming, what her purpose was. That would make a lot more sense. And again, it would give Stannis a reason to trust her outside of just seeing, all the craziness. She's the one who saved his daughter, so of course he would trust her. The conversation between Jon and Stannis. Well, obviously last week we thought that Jon was going to be in hot water. He was going to be in trouble. However, Stannis has found reason to get buddy-buddy with Jon. He wants to use Jon as a pawn to regain the North so that he can reunite the North under his banner. Really interesting stuff. When he offered to make Jon a Stark, that was like a great emotional moment, right? Because that's like what Jon's always wanted. And we all know that's what he wanted. He wanted to be seen as an equal to Robb. And he's even talked about that in previous episodes before.
I don't punish men for bravery. I reward them.
I don't doubt it, Your Grace. But I'm a brother of the Night's Watch. I pledge them my life, my honor, my sword. I don't know what I have left to give you.
You can give me the North.
I can't. Even if I wanted to, I'm a bastard. A Snow.
Kneel before me. Lay your sword at my feet. Pledge me your service, and you'll rise again as Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell.
I cannot fathom why Jon wouldn't leap at this opportunity. I mean, I do understand why, because I'm a Stark and I'm honorable and blah blah blah. But that didn't get Ned very far. So, I guess Jon did exactly what I expected from him to do, but I think it was a terrible, terrible decision.
Well, I mean, it's funny because it's a win-win. It's such a win-win, right? Because Jon gets what he wants. Stannis gets what he wants. And I love that. And it's honestly better for the North overall because otherwise Bolton's cray-cray folk are ruling over the North. On one hand, and in all reality, it was probably a bad mistake, but that's who Jon is. It goes back to all those sayings we've always heard the Starks repeat over and over again. Catelyn told to Robb, if you don't, follow through with your vows, your people are going to do the same. So he's got this whole thing. I pledge this vow. If I can't, maintain my own vow as a Night's Watch, why would anyone in the North want to follow me in the first place?
I know last week, I think it was you, Caleb, had said that maybe Stannis earned some points last week for some of the things that he had said, but I feel like any points he gained last week, he lost this week.
Really?
Because specifically one phrase that he said, so maybe I'm being very judgmental because of this phrase, but it was when they were talking about he was bringing up to Jon that I meant to burn him alive. You saved him. You showed him mercy. If you show and he said something to the effect of, if you show people mercy, they don't fear you, and if they don't fear you, they don't follow you. And so that whole statement means that his entire leadership is based on fear. If people fear him, then they'll follow him. That's how he's going to get people to follow him. And I feel like that's a terrible idea of how you should get people to follow. That's like almost a Hitlerish idea of how to get people to follow you. So that whole statement really bothered me a lot. And from that perspective, I think Jon's making a good decision in the sense of not going to give into this leader's fear tactics. I'm not going to go along with that ideal. But in the same sense, I also completely understand that by not agreeing with Stannis, he may have put himself in some more danger. But yeah, when he said that, I really didn't like that. At all, so.
And that's not the only that's not the only little spiel we got on fear this week. That was a kind of a recurring theme, and we'll get to later. Coming also from the words of Dario, talking about fear and how that works.
Right.
And fear. I thought that was really good. But and again, I obviously do not respect Stannis' tactics, burning people at the stake, attempting to rule people through fear. He's not wrong. In his mind, to get an army to gain soldiers, he has to be fearful. I don't respect that. I'm not a fan. I'm with you. However, I do feel like to some degree what he's trying to do, and I know it's kind of a tactic to get Jon on his side, but you really feel like, in a sense, he's still trying to right the wrongs all the way back from season 1 when Ned Stark got decapitated and the North fell, Robb Stark, all those things. He's trying to regain the North and get a Stark back in Winterfell. Now, whether or not you think his motivation for that is okay, I do think there's a hint. I mean, at least as the audience, we would love to see that, right?
We talked about it a little bit last week. Is Jon Snow going to be in trouble because he shot Mance Rayder instead of allowing him to burn? Turns out, zero impact to Jon Snow from that. Like, nothing happened to him at all. In fact, Stannis kind of implied that he respected Jon Snow for bravery. He's like, I reward bravery. I don't know if that was totally directed at his actions there, but that's the way I took it anyway.
Well, it's because, again, he's playing, this is Stannis we're talking about. He's, in his own way, he's playing the nice guy because he needs Jon. He realizes he needs Jon. He needs a Stark in Winterfell who is loyal to him to win the North. And you realize once he gets to North, his army probably triples in size. And, he's got a lot more momentum for his cause at that point.
I'm a big Stannis hater. I think he's stupid. I think he has made a lot of terrible decisions, and he's super selfish. But in this scenario, recently, he has not been dumb about his choices.
No, I think this is a great I think both strategies he's had so far about getting the wildlings on his side and trying to use Jon to regain the North, because it's win-win too. That's what good leaders do. It's beneficial for both parties. Like Jon wants to be the. I mean, he wants to be a Stark, and he knows he wants that. Like, so I think that's a great leadership tactic.
Burning Mance was kind of stupid.
Oh, well, okay. Burning Mance was stupid. Ultimately, Stannis put himself in a very poor ultimatum in that situation because it was a perfect plan if Mance had agreed. But since he didn't agree, the whole thing falls apart. You know what I mean? Like, it all hinged on one person, which probably not the greatest plan. I don't think Jon made a great decision here. I think it's respectable, and it's who he is, so it's honorable and respectable. It's the same reason we loved freaking Ned Stark, and it's the same reason we love Jon Snow. If he had made a different decision, he would have compromised part of himself, and I've been disappointed. However, I think this could have been a huge win for him, for the North, and for Stannis. Beneficial for everybody involved. I mean,
I guess it all comes down to how you define, good decisions. Like if this is if the decisions you make are based on survivability, is this a good decision? It depends on how you're, it depends on your definition of good decisions.
Well, yeah, okay. From a political stance, it would have been very smart for him to have taken this, and because again, it's a win-win. Everyone on his party wins. Well, let's go ahead and move on with the Jon storyline. Then moving on to the election of the Lord Commander, and listeners out there, I do have to apologize. I made an error. Now, I watched last week's episode, The Wars to Come, 3 times, and I don't know if I misheard it or misunderstood how the scene, but when Sam was talking about Alistair Thorne, I had thought he had insinuated that Alistair Thorne had taken the position of Lord Commander, and which for me was kind of unusual, because I was expecting an election such of this to happen, but for whatever reason, I misinterpreted. So, no, clearly, Alistair Thorne was not the Lord Commander.
We had a listener contact us and let us know how wrong you were.
Oh, boy. Even my infinite well of omniscient Game of Thrones knowledge, more knowledgeable than George R. R. Martin himself, is fallible, and I make mistakes from time to time. Excuse me, folks. Excuse me. Okay, but so correction on last week's episode. I do apologize for that error. Clearly, he was not Lord Commander, as we went on to the election of the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch in this week's episode. And this was another great scene on all accounts. It was fun, because we had some great dialogue, some great sparring. I thought all the speeches involved here were great. I still gain respect from Alistair Thorne a little bit here. Let me correct this here. Make sure we're drawing distinctions. I did not respect Janos Slynt, the guy who nominated Alistair Thorne. He's the dude from the Battle on the Wall who, as Sam so elegantly pointed out, went and hid with the wildling girl and the baby.
That was burned.
Oh, that was so great.
So can Austin admit that this may be one of the best moments? Like, this is a good moment for Sam?
Yeah, look at that. Sam brought that up, Austin.
Yeah.
Austin, I think Sam's growing and like becoming a more interesting, like he's getting a backbone a little bit. What do you think?
Nothing can make up for what he has done. Nothing.
Oh, wow. Holy moly.
So Sam gave a great motivational speech saying, hey, Jon's the guy we need. He's the one he's the natural leader. When we needed him the most, he came through for us, even when Alistair and Janos and all these people couldn't. Great speech. I also have to point out, though, if I was just a normal Night's Watch guy who didn't have, favorites and such, I would say I would say Alistair Thorne raised a very compelling point in his defense. Obviously, he lost.
Really did. He had a great, respectable speech.
Yes.
For his, it was like, hey, Jon Snow's great. He did a lot of good work, and I respect him a lot for that. But you can't trust him because he spent so much time with the wildlings. Fair point, fair speech. I have a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, Alistair Thorne, a guy we all hated in season 1. I'm not saying I love him, but I'm like, this guy's slowly earned my respect. Is like, okay, I don't like you, but you know what? You're smart, and you know what you're doing, and you really believe in the cause you're fighting for, so cool. Austin, what did you expect going into this scene?
I assumed Jon would end up being nominated, and he did, because otherwise it was kind of silly. I 100% believe Alistair Thorne was going to win, and then Jon Snow's life would be miserable, and he'd leave and become a Stark and help out Stannis. That was how I saw the series of events happening. Clearly that did not happen. Now, Jon Snow is going to be Lord Commander. Alistair Thorne is still going to make his life miserable, but he can't leave anymore.
That's right. Now he has to listen to him. So now he can only be annoying he can only be annoying and disgruntled, as opposed to a total make Jon's life miserable.
It's gonna end up leading to mutiny for sure against Jon Snow.
A mutiny?
I believe that will happen. Yes.
So you think Alistair Thorne is going to lead a mutiny?
More or less, yeah. I think eventually he'll sow throughout discord throughout the ranks of the wall, and eventually people are going to turn against Jon. Ouch.
Dang, Austin, that is, for a moment that should be so happy for the audience, you're saying, so you're thinking he's going to be Lord, his reign as Lord Commander is going to be short-lived, and he's going to be backstabbed.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think he's going to get away because he's Jon Snow.
Okay.
But he's not, I don't believe he's going to remain there long.
Okay. Well, fair point. I mean, since when do things in Game of Thrones last long? And we'll have to see what kind of leader Jon's going to be, too. I mean, I think that's a viable theory, but we need to see exactly what kind of leader is Jon. Because I feel like if he navigates this well, he could be like Ned Stark and everyone loves him, right? But if he doesn't play his cards right, because he clearly doesn't know how to play politics like he needs to learn how to do, even in this role as Lord Commander, he needs to know how to play to his audience and his troops. What do you think? Which of the decisions do you think would have been better for Jon? Choosing to follow Stannis and become a Stark, or remain Lord Commander of the Night's Watch? What do you guys think?
What he should have done is become a Stark, regain the North, and then abandon Stannis. That's what he needed to do.
So follow Stannis and then backstab him later.
Yeah, or just don't show up for the next battle. After he regains the North and Stannis is marching south, he'll be like, peace, I'm king of the North. And that's it. You just throw up the deuces.
Wouldn't it be epic if the show ended with I don't know, maybe like the season ends, or maybe not this season, but a season ends with everyone rallying around him with the King of the North speech again? Wouldn't that be epic?
Jon Snow just flipping off Stannis and laughing from the top of Winterfell.
From the top of Winterfell, he's like, "Hey Stannis, check this out!" Woo!
Yep, that's right.
Yeah,
or he'll do the whole French soldier thing from Monty Python.
I don't want to talk to you no more, you empty-headed animal food trough whopper. I fart in your general direction. Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberries.
Next thing you know, cows are getting launched over the wall. I mean, jeez.
That's it. That's how that's what should have happened. We missed a golden opportunity here.
I think he made a good decision in the sense that he is the best choice, and he's the person that's going to keep the wall in the best shape and keep them the most safe. Will that cost him? That could potentially be more life-threatening to him.
I think ultimately it was a more selfless decision, not only because he was keeping to his vows, because legitimately he's the only person up there who really seems to know, holy crap, there are White Walkers coming, and I'm actually trying to prepare for it, versus Alistair not so concerned with that. Now the issue comes in, though, can he hold the wall together until they get there? I still think long term, this is me purely out of strategy. He goes with Stannis. He gets the North back. He prepares the North to fight White Walkers and says, "Forget the wall. That's too late. It's already a lost battle." Takes the North back. Says, "Forget the Battle of the Seven Kingdoms. I'm preparing for White Walkers." Right. So in that sense, he is kind of saying, "Forget you, Stannis." But I think that would be more beneficial for the North as a whole. Let's go ahead and move on to some more big news in King's Landing. King's Landing, lots of fun stuff. Cersei continuing her power trek, of course, her power trip, trying to dominate everything, of course. And it all starts with threats from Dorne. She gets a little snake warning thing with a little necklace from Myrcella, who is apparently being threatened in Dorne. And I thought it was a very, very cool scene between Jaime and Cersei. They both openly admitted to Myrcella being their daughter, whereas before they hadn't really ever acknowledged, at least to my recollection, they never really acknowledged Joffrey as their son or Tommen as their son. Makes good, and I feel like Jaime feels a little bit guilty here. I don't know what you guys think.
Jaime definitely, I don't know how much he felt guilty or how much he just you know what, I think I'm done here. I think I'm going to leave because you're crazy. This whole place is falling apart and I'm out.
I actually felt like he felt bad because Cersei's been sitting on a guilt trip about letting Tyrion go, and now their daughter's life in danger. And even though he's never really been a father to her, and if you've read the books, the connection between him and his children is just totally non-existent.
Look, when you're getting nagged constantly over every single decision you've ever made, that's when it's time to just you know what, I think I'm going to take off to a nice sunny climate, hang out. I view Dorne like Hawaii, okay? That's what it's like.
Dorne like Hawaii? Well, it's quite beautiful, and I've already got my vacations plans set, booked tickets this week. I was like, man, Dorne seems like a great vacation spot, so hashtag Dorne life. Basically, just kind of giving us a feel for where the Jaime and Cersei relationship is at. And I don't know, Austin, I do disagree. I thought it was a very complicated. It's now in the, if we go back to the olden days of Facebook, it's in the quote, it's complicated stage.
I definitely got the feeling that Jaime wanted to do this because he hasn't really been able to do much since he got his hand chopped off. So he wanted to feel useful again.
Really? I really take, okay, and this is cool, and I don't think you're wrong. I don't think those feelings are wrong. I really took from it he felt like he needed to redeem himself for something. I don't know if it's necessarily in the eyes of Cersei, but he feels like I still think he feels like letting Tyrion go was a mistake. I think he feels like it was a mistake because ultimately Tywin dead, and I think he feels bad about that. In a way, I feel like this is him, even though it's for Cersei, which obviously he's got mixed feelings about anyway. I feel like he's trying to redeem himself somehow. Like he really wants to go out and do something to do something better for his family, I guess.
I did feel like, though, it was in the eyes of Cersei because he kept saying our daughter. Like he said, I'm going to go get our daughter back. I don't know. He kept bringing her into it. So I felt like it was, in some sense, to redeem himself in the eyes of Cersei.
I don't have that much faith in Jaime Lannister and feeling remorse, I guess.
But I mean, look on his face. Just go back and watch that scene again and look at his face. Like he feels something there where he's like, man, I need to do something. I feel bad about something. Whether you think it's for Cersei or for killing, whatever. He definitely feels guilty.
I guess I just believe that Jaime Lannister is far more arrogant than you believe he is.
Well, I think he was arrogant, but since getting his hand chopped off, he's been acting a little more noble these days.
Now his hand's golden. It's even more reason to be arrogant. Solid gold.
I've got the Midas touch. Everything I touch turns to gold. Oh, sugar.
Listeners out there, what do you think? Jaime Lannister, guilty? Wants to get away? Wants to go sip on some tequila down in Dorne? What do you think? Tune in. Send us a message. Let us know what you guys think, and we'll read your responses on the air next week. He leaves on the cliffhanger. He says, "But I'm not going to Dorne alone." Where else does he go? He goes and recruits Bronn. Because why not? Because Bronn is awesome. There has to be a Lannister-Bronn bromance for the show to succeed and be awesome. And I love this because in the books, that character is totally phased out after the events of King's Landing, or after Tyrion's trial and everything. He's phased out. He goes and marries Lawless, and he's only alluded to later. So it was really, really great to see that he's going to be sticking around. And that scene between him and Lawless was so funny. I thought I couldn't help but crack up because Bronn's is just kind of chill dude. He's seen a lot of bad stuff. He's just like, man, how fast can I get that castle? That's what he's thinking.
That's all he wants, man. He's old, which makes this entire partnership kind of hilarious. It's like two over-the-hill, aging swordsmen who are way past their prime are going to go on like one last epic journey. When Bronn was clearly ready to basically retire and have a castle, which he quickly found out that he was not going to get the castle, and he was kind of sad about it. So maybe he was pretty happy.
He wanted to retire until he found out that he might get a bigger castle and a better woman.
Yeah, basically.
And then he was kind of like all back into it, I think.
Well, like Jamie basically said, I liked how Jamie said, he said, hey, I need you to come work for me. And he's like, listen, I know if you come around, it's nothing but trouble. I know nothing good can come from this. And he's like, everything good can come from this, right? And that was funny. He said, well, I made a deal with your sister. And Jamie's just like, well, that was your mistake. He made a deal with Cersei. Game of Thrones has so far in the first 2 episodes at least, seems like it's got a little bit of a hint of optimism in it. Last week it was Varys talking about, positive. There could be a great ruler on the throne who can actually right the wrongs and take care of the people. This week, you've got Bronn, who's like, your sister, she's a mean person. I've been all around the world, and one thing I've learned is that meanness comes around. They always get what's coming to them eventually, one way or the another. Which is hilarious, because Bronn's seen nothing but terrible deaths everywhere.
Now look, don't trust this. This is a big ploy. You cannot trust this. They're setting you up for something awful.
Optimism. I believe that he's optimistic. He wants the world to be a better place.
Jaime Lannister is going to get ground up and turned into sausages right before your very eyes.
Turned into sausages? Whoa! Cannibalism. Well, I don't know. I think we're gonna get a great little road trip bromance between Jaime and Bronn. It's like Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon 4. I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, Lethal Weapon. They're all old in all of them, FYI. So it's okay.
Nope, it's Lethal Weapon.
I'm too old for this shit.
Who's the one that keeps saying I'm too old for this?
Yeah, that's Danny Glover, right? Yeah, Danny Glover.
No, I mean, which one, Bronn or Jaime?
Oh, that's definitely just gonna be Jaime because he's got the hand. He's gonna be.
It's gotta be Jaime.
Yeah, he's gonna be.
Bronn is Mel Gibson.
Who needs another Lethal Weapon reboot? Because I'm sure it's coming. When you've got Game of Thrones, it gives you it all. Well, we will see what happens here. I will say this is a major departure from the book series, so I'm very, very excited to see where it's going. His arc in the book is more about gaining his own self-confidence as his own person, like because he's always kind of felt like he's in love with Cersei or loyal to his father. And with both of them in the books, he kind of splits off from Cersei, and obviously his father's dead. So he's on this personal journey of self-rediscovery and building and forging his identity. I'm not quite so sure that's exactly where they're going with his storyline in the show, but we will see. I'm very excited. That's not all that was going on in King's Landing, though. Cersei was also beheading some dwarves because she really wants some vengeance on Tyrion. She's just like, all right, bring me a dwarf head, I'll pay you some money. Only real takeaway I had from the scene is why in Seven Kingdoms is Qyburn collecting dwarf heads? He's like, actually, don't take that head with you. I need that for some experiments.
His studies, man.
What is he studying? Dwarf skulls? I don't...
There's lots of interesting things you could do with heads.
Science.
What a fine day for science.
You could turn it into a wine goblet, as we had seen north of the wall.
Yes, you could use dwarf skulls as goblets. That is possible. You could drink from the head of a dwarf. Or sorry,
maybe
the skull of a dwarf.
He needed some glassware, and he broke all his wine goblets, and he's like, you know what? Let's not waste this.
What kind of mad scientist would he be if he didn't have some dwarf skulls laying around?
Right.
He's doing something with that stuff. He's pretty much Dr. Frankenstein as far as I'm concerned.
Here's an idea.
What?
What if he's recreating Tyrion?
Oh, snap. Oh, snap. He's building a better Tyrion. What's he going to use it for?
I don't know. Tyrion did pretty well at the Blackwater fight. Maybe he needs to build himself some super soldiers.
And what's interesting is she's putting Dr. Frankenstein himself on the small council because I don't know. Because
it's her new pet. That's why.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a great point. Someone she can control. She gives him what he wants, and he does what she says. So she controls this guy. Even though clearly what he's up to is very unusual, and even Pycelle's like, listen, this guy is not bad. He's bad news.
Pycelle does nothing. He's the most useless pile of turd in the entire show.
He really is.
I agree.
Aside from Sam.
He's just a brown noser.
He's the one person who knew that Cersei killed Joffrey. So that's why she sent him away.
What? Oh, whoa, Austin, are we still holding on to that theory?
Look, guys, it has not been fully revealed yet.
Listeners who were tuning in, who did not tune to our podcast last season, go listen. Austin has an odd obsession, and he's convinced that it has yet to be revealed that Cersei is actually the one who poisoned Joffrey. Interesting point with Qyburn, though, leading into that small council thing, though. That what was great about the small council meeting? Kevin Lannister. That was great. Calling Cersei out on her crap. Basically said, yeah, I'd love to serve the king. Just have him ask me.
I feel like there was a lot to that scene. I felt like this was the first time that we've really seen someone besides Tywin really step up to Cersei, and she can't do anything about it. She couldn't say anything to him at all. Like, as he just walked out, and she was just like, okay, he's leaving. Like, she couldn't do a thing about it. And so I think it's just, again, showing, like, she can't be her father.
Oh, no.
No,
she can't
But she literally has zero power. She's not Hand of the King. She's the Queen Mother, which means she's nothing.
Yep.
Oh, and the way she's kind of covering, she says, oh, I'm representing the king because he's busy. She can't tell anyone what he's busy doing.
Exactly. So he calls her out on it and is like, so once he's ready to come, then I'll come to the meetings. But until then, I'll be in
Casterly Rock.
Casterly Rock.
Yeah. What was so funny? It's such an obvious. Would it make sense though, even for her perspective? Why not just bring him to the meetings to like learn how to do stuff? Like, it's not that hard.
Right.
I don't get it. So of course that would make sense.
But then she can't complete control, and that's so yeah.
Right.
Well,
that's what she wants.
Toman's busy with his new fiance.
His girly girl. They're not married yet. They're not that busy. No consummation yet.
Because that's what people wait for, is the marriage part.
Which, by the way, guys, there's a wedding coming soon. Have we thought about that?
Weddings are bad.
Weddings are bad. Weddings are bad on Game of Thrones.
Weddings are great whenever there's Lannisters involved.
Yeah, all the time. Lannisters are the best wedding parties. I thought it was quite humorous. She threw out, Jaime has left the capital to lead a sensitive diplomatic mission. We know how diplomatic missions, as referenced earlier, we know how diplomatic missions go. How about we ask the captain from Star Wars New Hope how that went?
We intercepted no transmissions. This is a consular ship. We're on a diplomatic mission.
If this is a consular ship, where is the ambassador?
So that spells doom for Jaime Lannister down in Dorne. Thank you. That was all we kind of had for King's Landing this week. But you know what comes next, right? Dorne. We finally got to go see Dorne. I never should have trusted Oberyn Martell, okay? He was all about how awesome Dorne was. And yeah, it was pretty and all, but I saw none of those things. I didn't even see any wine. Come on, man.
Dorne was supposed to be the Las Vegas of Westeros. We got nothing.
The Las Vegas of Westeros? All I got was an extremely bitter former mistress whose lover was dead, and then some dude on a throne who's just like, oh, I can't do anything.
A guy sitting in an amazing jazzy. That's pretty much exactly Las Vegas.
I can attest to that.
Honestly, guys, I'll put my thoughts out here. This was a very awkward introduction to Dorne. Now, I'm excited about Dorne as anybody. I think, especially the way Oberyn talked about last season and having read the books, I'm very excited to see this come in. And it was cool to see Alara Sand. If you guys remember, that's the former paramour lover who witnessed his own demise at the battle last year. You know, the one who screamed her lungs. Yeah, that one. And and she's seeking justice. So she goes to Oberyn's brother, the actual ruler of Doran Martell. Now, again, a quick little history lesson. Doran Martell was actually the one who was supposed to go to Westeros for the wedding, but he currently has gout, so he can't walk. And just look at it. I mean, just look at him in this chair. He's pretty much like paralyzed in that chair. He doesn't move. And she's saying, "Let's go ahead. Let's start a war. Basically, let's start a war. Oberyn, we need justice for Oberyn and your sister."
I agree that it was kind of a weird introduction. I didn't feel like they really introduced the characters. The first time I watched it, it kind of felt like, oh, hey, there's the two characters. They're clearly in Dorne, and they know Oberyn Martell, and they're arguing about it. But they didn't. I didn't feel like they really introduced the characters that well, like who they were and things like that. So I thought that was kind of awkward. But I am excited about it, about what's going to be happening, where it's going and stuff like that. But I just thought, I agree that it was kind of a weird introduction to these new characters.
Well, and it was only really, I believe, only one scene, which again, for an introduction to a whole new country, I was expecting more. And when I say more, I don't even mean better. I just mean like actual more time. It's like, hey, here's a scene. Oh, and hey, there's Marcella playing with the person she's betrothed to, Tristan, which we did not get that detail. But oh, hey, there's Marcella. He's hanging out.
That's what I mean. Is I feel like they didn't give enough detail. Like it almost like they kind of expect us to know what was going on a little bit. So it was kind of a weird scene in that way.
It didn't tell us a whole lot. What I found most interesting was it was really our first look at the country and kind of the architecture and the culture associated with it. We kind of got a glimpse into it. And as I'm sure viewers have noticed, each kind of area in Westeros kind of has its own cultural theme. You have King's Landing, which is almost like English, medieval English culture. The North is kind of vaguely Scottish. Essos is more or less Middle Eastern. And then you have Dorne now, which is basically seemingly entirely Spanish.
Yeah.
Down to the architecture and the gardens and different things. So I always think that's kind of cool when we get to see a new area, like what it's kind of themed after. We've never really gotten any kind of Eastern cultures, really, but it was kind of neat. It's pretty much what you expected, given like the clothing styles and different things you got from Oberyn when you saw him. But this kind of fleshes that out a little bit more.
I'll tell you what. I only had before this episode. I only had modest aspirations to go visit Spain. But again, just from the few shots of what we saw, this place is gorgeous. It looks amazing. The water gardens were actually filmed on location in Spain. Really, exactly what you said. It brought a new type of architecture, an entirely different feel than what we've seen on this show elsewhere. And I was totally in. Like, I can't wait to spend more time there. It was almost like, hey, let's check in with Dorne because that's where we're going to go later this season. And it didn't even appear in the credits, which again I thought was unusual because they almost always previously will show you a location they're going to go to. So I don't know. I'm excited to see what's going on with Dorne. I can't wait to see more, honestly. But as stands, not the most effective introduction to Game of Thrones, I don't think. Dorne was great. Hopefully we'll be talking about that again next week or in the next couple weeks. But let's move on to another storyline that I thought was fun. I don't know exactly how much it told us, but we got to have another really awesome run-in with Brienne and Littlefinger. And it was really cool because anytime these storylines collide for any reason at all, it's like, ooh, there's purpose to all this crazy, like these big sprawling storylines that never interact. It was really cool to see Brienne interact with Littlefinger, a character she's met before but never really had full interaction with, right? And I actually thought this was a fun little scene. Maybe not the most important thing ever, but I quite enjoyed it. Maybe not the most, hey, this is going somewhere scene, but I enjoyed it. Seeing, basically showing that Podrick was actually useful for something. Lots of fun.
I thought Sansa's take on the whole situation was interesting. That was kind of surprising to me. I didn't think she'd be immediately distant from Brienne and just immediately say, like, I saw you bow to the king, so I'm not talking to you. I thought that was kind of surprising. Yeah. But from the whole scene in general, I think it made me get frustrated with Brienne. I feel like she's being overly stubborn. Like, she's going to follow them, and Sansa, she's just going to get herself in more trouble because it was pretty clear that Sansa or Littlefinger didn't really want her there.
Right.
So I got the feeling like it's kind of weird. It's like they're trying to keep Brienne around just for the sake of keeping the character around. She's not really doing anything. So you get the feeling that it's just dragging for the sake of just having a character be there. So I don't know exactly how I feel about it. The exchange itself was fine. I totally get why Sansa doesn't want to trust her. If anything, she's learned that over the years in King's Landing, and it's probably a very valuable lesson for her to have learned. I I guess Littlefinger wants to kill Brienne because he doesn't want anyone to know that he has Sansa, but that's going to get out eventually anyway. So I didn't understand that whole part of it.
I'll just say this. I mean, Littlefinger was totally going to kill her because he doesn't want that getting out. He wants to contain it as long as he possibly can. And FYI, I thought Brienne, God love her. God bless her heart. She was loud on my Lady Sansa, Neil. I mean, she made it such a scene. She made such a scene out of that whole scenario. Littlefinger almost had to kill her, right?
They're pretending that she's someone else to everyone else, right?
Yes. They are pretending that she is his nephew. It is her nephew or her niece. His niece.
That entire inn knows at this point.
Yeah.
Right. So like he has to,
that's
because
out of the bag.
he doesn't want people to know that it's who it actually is. So she like forces him into that kind of decision, like because he's trying to hide her true identity. I understand where he's coming from because
I know Littlefinger. I'm a Littlefinger fanboy. I get it, okay? But he makes a compelling argument. Why would Sansa go with you? Why? I mean, she has no real reason. She doesn't know who Brienne is. All she has as her word. Sansa's already learned her lessons, and even if you take her at her word, she failed to protect the people she was sworn to. Versus Littlefinger, who, despite the fact that he might not necessarily have Sansa's best, best intentions at heart, he is ultimately protecting her to an extent, right? So, and he's proven that he's going to do that. Versus Brienne, who's this total stranger, she doesn't know, who's just kind of there, and she has seen battle before, the King and King's Landing. So, I think Littlefinger makes a good argument. I think Brienne is really annoying, is really frustrating me because Podrick makes a good point. Yeah. Also, listen,
neither of them want your help. Like, you're done.
Like, what is the purpose of you in the story, right? Which I think
that's why. I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking as a viewer. Like, what's the? It just seems kind of weird. Like they're just keeping her around for the sake of keeping her around.
Well, I'll say this, Austin. It's still more.
The Hound should have lived. That's what I'm trying to say here. The Hound should have lived, and Brienne should have died. It was a mistake in the story.
George R. R. Martin be damned.
A mistake in the story.
Wow. Game of Thrones does not have mistakes, Austin. There are no. It's a flawless masterpiece. No mistakes ever. I can't believe you. No matter how pointless you think this is, it's still significantly more interesting than what happens in the book. So keep that in mind.
That's actually true.
It's such a snooze fest. It's not even funny. But let's move on to a storyline that it was at least more impactful, or at least we hope so. Arya arriving in Braavos. We've been building up to this for 4 seasons. 4 seasons of Arya going to Braavos, and finally she makes it. Braavos looks amazing. It reminded me of, I don't know, I haven't actually been here, but it reminded me of how I've always imagined Venice. You know, you've got these boats riding under all these piers with all these shops along the shores, and it's all lively in the marketplace and everything like that. Very, very exciting. Very cool place. And I was like, man, this is great. Arya is finally where she belongs. This is great. And she finally makes it to the House of Black and White so she can be trained by the Faceless Men and hopefully meet Jaqen H'ghar. And what does she encounter? A door slammed in her face. What's up with this, guys? What's up?
Yeah, I think that I'm super excited that she's finally here. I actually kind of thought that was going to be it. She gets the door shut in her face, and then she sits there for a little bit and then walks off. And I thought that was actually going to be all we got from her for a period of time. So I'm glad we got to re-enter it, which we can talk about later. But I don't know. I just there's a lot of mysteriousness involved around this whole situation, and it'll be interesting to find out more information.
But she basically did just get to walk right in. Like, nothing happened in between the time when they rejected her, when they said, yeah, come join us. Like, nothing happened in between that. She cut off a head off a bird, and that was pretty much it.
I was really torn how to feel about it, because on one hand, it's like, yeah, Arya Braavos is like, why? These Faceless Men are pricks. They're locking her out for no reason just so they can let her in later. What's the point of this?
It seemed, exactly to your point, it seemed really weird. They wouldn't let her in to begin with, and then, I don't know, a few days later, they're like, hey, come on in. No problem. Nothing's changed between now and then at all. Like, if anything, I wasn't expecting them to let her right in. I don't even think they should have. But they should have drug out the whole Braavos thing for at least a couple episodes so we can explore the city, kind of see how she adjusts to a whole new life, and kind of, I don't know, I really done more with the story there, I guess. But the way they did it, I'm happy that she's finally where she needs to be, and maybe they just felt like her storyline was dragging a little bit and they needed to move it along. But I thought they could have done a lot more in Braavos before she ever got into this.
Like, I feel like this was supposed to feel like some sort of test, but a test of what, patience? Like, because literally, you're right, nothing changed between when she got there and when they let her in.
Yeah, like that was the thing. It did feel like a test, but the test was never given. Like, it's just sort of like, because she's supposed to just. Did she pass the test?
She killed a pigeon.
Don't really know what it was.
She killed a pigeon. That was the test. Can you kill a pigeon?
I think more of it may have been the fact that these three guys kind of like approached her and she pulled out her sword and was like ready to defend herself or whatever.
I mean, I was being sarcastic about the birds. I mean, these.
Right.
I just don't. She stood up to some bullies. I don't think that's it. I want to say. If I have one criticism of the storyline, it's that it doesn't make sense. Either that,
her actions in Harrenhal were far more noteworthy than anything she did in Braavos. So it doesn't make any sense.
So all I'm saying is the faceless men are a bunch of pricks. They're like, hey, you can't come in. Now go sit in the rain and pray your prayer of death like 8 times before you come into our house. And then we just decided one day, hey, that girl seemed pretty cool. Let's let her in.
Yeah, and then it actually gets kind of touched on, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit in the preview for the next episode. It's kind of like how this went down. But ultimately, it seemed kind of weird. I'm really, really happy to see her storyline moving. I think this is great. I'm so excited to get with the Faceless Men again. I think they're one of the more interesting groups of people. Hopefully, we'll get to learn about their motives and what they do. Are they just mercenaries or just hired out? We don't really know a ton about them yet. What are the coins for? All that sort of thing.
Did you guys feel kind of weird when she went back and Jaqen H'ghar was kind of talking to her? Like, the way that he kind of talked to her, do y'all feel like it was actually the same character or it was like someone else?
That's the thing. It could be Jaqen H'ghar. It could be a faceless man disguising himself as Jaqen H'ghar. Or maybe there was no Jaqen H'ghar to begin with. Maybe this is all just a bunch of faces.
Right, exactly. I felt like when they were talking, I felt like this doesn't feel like this might not be the same person. Like, this might just be someone else who knew that she wanted to look like Jaqen H'ghar or whatever.
Well,
I don't know.
That's totally true. That is completely true. Maybe that's why they were stalling. They're trying to figure out. She says Jaqen. Why? Who's Jaqen? We need to find out. Let's send a Raven over to Westeros to find out who said they were Jaqen H'ghar.
Well, I think that I also thought his phrase was interesting when he says, like, I'm no one, and that's what you need to become. That was an interesting phrase.
Well, in reality, that's the philosophy of the Faceless Men, right? If you truly become a Faceless Man, you are no one. You're not Arya Stark anymore. You're whoever you need to be in that scenario.
Right, exactly.
You're given missions, and you're given missions. Those missions drive you, and then you change your face based off of whoever the mission needs you to be. So you're James Bond, 007. You're MI6, man. I'm telling you, they are the Faceless Men are the MI6 of Westeros. Well, we'll see where that goes. I will say, ask you guys, what did you think about the return of Jaqen H'ghar? Now, I will say again, another deviation from the books. No Jaqen H'ghar in the books. Is totally some other dude in the books who introduced her. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm not a stickler for details, so I thought it was fine. That was Jaqen. The show has done this. It makes more sense
from the show's perspective. It makes a lot more sense than introduce a whole new character.
Right. And they've done this several times. They did this with Gendry, and whenever Melisandre needed bastard blood of Robert Baratheon, she went with Gendry as opposed to some other random dude. That's totally cool. I get it. It works. I mean, we guys. Were you excited to see Jaqen H'ghar back?
It was cool because I think he was a cool guy when we met him back in season 2. He definitely had like this aura around him. You're like, oh, this guy's awesome, and he can do all these cool things, and you don't really see it, but you know it. So I think that in that sense, I'm excited to see him again. Maybe we'll get to see some of the awesomeness of Jaqen H'ghar.
Yeah, I was super, super excited. That was like, when that happened in the episode, Beth and I were just looked at each other like, yes, we're so excited. Because no one has killed as efficiently as Jaqen ever in all the episodes of the show.
He was like flawless.
Oh yeah, you didn't even know. Everyone was just dead. Everybody, all the people.
My favorite was when that one dude got assassinated. He was walking in to talk to Tywin and then got assassinated in the doorway. It feels for me a little borderline fan servicey, but since I'm a fan, I don't really care. So we'll just roll with it.
Just Jaqen?
Yeah, it feels because he's a fan favorite, even though in the books and in the show, really, he has such a small role for one part of the show. But it was so awesome for that one time he was in there. So I mean, I don't know. You guys, if you disagree, that's fine. I did feel like a bit of fan service there, but hey, I'm a fan. I don't really mind.
Maybe it was. But had you not known that it was different in the books, you probably wouldn't think that.
Okay, that's fair. That's totally fine. And again, I think it makes more sense, honestly, that we're using a character we know. I only bring this up because in the books, Jack Winterguard may or may not be somewhere else around the same time. But who knows? That's the only reason. I mean, again, it's not even like it's not
really him.
It's true.
Maybe other faceless man just wearing that face.
Right. I really feel like the way that he talked at the end made me feel like it wasn't actually him.
Totally different guy. Okay. Yeah. Well, we will see. We will see. This is Game of Thrones, so we had to do a check-in with Tyrion because it's Game of Thrones, and because he's the most popular character, we can't not see Tyrion for one episode. So we checked in with Tyrion and Varys on the road from Pentos to Valyria. So, I mean, it was a fun scene. I don't think it was particularly necessary, but I'll watch Tyrion and Varys spar, do some verbal sparring all day long.
Yeah, I was going to actually say the same thing. I don't feel like it really accomplished much, but that conversation was a great conversation to listen to.
I agree. Not much here, but, it's just some banter.
Just Varys reflecting on the meaning of his existence and Tyrion being extremely depressed and like, my life is worthless. I should love
really wanted to go on a walk.
He does not like being in a box. Listeners, if you have any comments on that particular scene, if you think, hey, maybe it's a little more important, feel free to shoot us a message, and we'll talk about it in next week's episode. But to close out, we have a really great conversation. I feel like we've got a great conversation here. We're going to wrap up with Meereen. And there was, guys, I've been very critical of Dany, very often critical of Dany's storyline, but this week, her situation is the reason I love Game of Thrones. So we go into Meereen this week, and she is so convinced that she's got to stop the Sons of the Harpies. And Dario, which, by the way, Dario got some points for me this week. Oh, this is a great scene when he's tracking down the Sons of the Harpy, and he gives his little spiel about fear.
No one here. We go.
In a hurry? You're afraid?
Unsullied, fear nothing.
Right. Well, that's your problem. You understood fear once long ago, but you've forgotten what it means. Someone who's forgotten fear has forgotten how to hide. Fear is useful that way.
Yeah, I always like it. I really enjoyed that as well. I always like when characters are comment on fear, in the sense that it can be useful because it can be. And I always dislike the people who are like, I'm afraid of nothing. Like Arya, for example, I'm afraid of nothing, which I know she's on a different thing right now. But there is a healthy amount of fear that fear is what helps keep you safe. It helps keep you aware of what's going on. And if you remove that fear, then if you don't have a fear of dying, then you're not going to be pushed to the limit that you need to be pushed to.
Right. No,
it's
exactly. Like I thought this was an interesting thematic tie-in to what Stannis was talking about, how he said Stannis uses fear to rule. This is the opposite. This is knowing what it's like to be in fear and how the oppression of fear makes you stronger.
The whole time watching this scene, I just kept thinking, I wish we had the old Dario still.
Really? I find him in the minority on this one. The new Dario is really warming up to me. Like last season, he didn't get to do a ton to do other than kill that night guy, and
he's just so white bread. It's so uninteresting.
Really? I never. Yeah. It has to be the looks, because I'll be honest. Go back and watch season 3 again and tell me that actor didn't seem white bread. I mean, the guy. Okay, we'll be honest here. Yes, guy number 1, way more attractive. Okay, I get it.
Well, I'm not all that concerned about that part of it, but the guy number 1 had an interesting accent and better. Like he just seemed less generic all around.
I will say
he just seems like a dude.
I don't know. I like the new one better.
I will say that
he looks like a dude that I see like walking down the street every day. Like had he looked like Dario is supposed to look and had like blue hair and crap, then maybe it'd be okay.
Okay, if he had the blue mustache, it would have been pretty great. I admit the blue mustache would have changed everything.
I will say that I feel like, I don't know if it's the character or the writing, but I feel like his character has changed in a sense. Like the character before was more of like this like pretty boy all about. I mean, that's partially a part of his appearance, but pretty boy all about the love and the attraction between him and Daenerys. And this one seems to be a very sexualized character, and this character does not seem to be nearly as sexual. He seems to be more well educated, like has some nice wisdom.
He's got some street knowledge to him too, like, you know.
Yeah, and I feel like his character, he's presenting the character a little bit differently. I don't know if that's writing or if that's just his own actor's
it's
take
definitely,
or whatever.
yeah, no, it's definitely, definitely a little bit of both. I mean, the actor, obviously, I know, Daniel, I think you're totally right, 100%. Way more sexualized, the original guy. I mean, no questions about it. Austin, I know you. You like the dudes with the long curly hair. That's what it is. I know you. I know your type.
He just seemed more interesting. That's all. This guy's just boring.
I want to move on past Dario here. You know, there is a lot of great stuff going on in this sequence. Oh man, there's just so many things to talk about here. So
there's a lot.
Okay. Before we get to the big thing, I want to talk a little bit about the scene between Dany and Barristan. Barristan, a really heartfelt scene between the two. Probably the first real scene where I really felt like he connected with her, like really connected.
When the people rose in revolt against him, your father set their towns and castles aflame. He murdered sons in front of their fathers. He burned men alive with wildfire and laughed as they screamed. And his efforts to stamp out dissent led to a rebellion that killed every Targaryen, except two.
I'm not my father.
Now, your grace, thank the gods. But the Mad King gave his enemies the justice he thought they deserved. And each time, it made him feel powerful and right. Until the very end.
And I respect Daenerys for taking his advice, saying, okay, this guy knew my dad, so we'll give the guy a trial.
Yeah, I think that, that was a fine. I really enjoyed that. I mean, yeah, it was a good scene. I'm surprised that she took his advice, because Daenerys is usually the one that's really stubborn and doesn't take anybody's advice. But it was surprising that she did take his advice. I think I would have tended to agree with that decision.
Yeah, everyone's always hating on Daenerys for that stuff. I know she occasionally doesn't listen to advice, but I think she has generally throughout the series has taken everybody's advice at least into consideration. Even if she doesn't follow it, she at least listens and kind of makes her own choices based on that, which is what you need to do as a ruler. Has it always worked out for her? No, absolutely not. But she did listen in this case, which was a good choice for her. The following events are something that are the result of the very first day she stepped into Meereen. There was nothing she could do to prevent this from happening. It was going to happen.
Yeah.
It was probably going to happen with or without her stepping into Meereen, would be my guess as well. She just kind of sped things along. But I truly believe that Meereen would have fallen into this type of state even if Daenerys never came.
Really? That's something I'm not sure I totally buy into. But I do think, given the fact that she exists in Meereen, this was something that was going to have to happen. So basically she says, okay, we're going to give the guy a trial. And these people, this guy who worship her, his name is, I think, Mosador. I don't know how you pronounce it. He'd only really been in one episode before today's episode. Two. He was in the premiere, and he was in one episode last season. And basically, he realized, he was smart enough to realize that her hands were tied, right? But he still wanted to seek that justice. So he went and killed the son of the Harpy on his own.
He is a former slave, right?
Yes, former slave. If you recall, it was the episode in which Grey Worm did his epic SEAL Team 6 invasion way back in last season, where he went in there and he if you recall, he actually met with like a bunch of underground like slaves who were like ready to fight back, and this was the leader, that guy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The key here is he killed him publicly.
And wrote "Kill the Masters" next to him.
Yeah,
that is where things really, really went bad for Daenerys.
Yeah. The fact that it was in public meant that she had to say something about it. So there was his body, kill the Masters, so she had to stick up and say, hey, this is not acceptable either. So even though she freed the slaves, and she's team anti-slave, she is also ruling a kingdom full of people who used to own slaves. He probably have all the money, FYI. Unfortunately, because he made a public example of that, son of the Harpy, she has to make a public example of him. And it's really heartbreaking because she really doesn't want to do that. You can just see in her eyes, but it's necessary. The problem here is this is very complicated. I don't think she made a wrong decision, but I don't think she made a good decision. I don't think she had a good answer in front of her on how to handle this situation. She kills him in public. The slaves are going to hate her. The people who make up the majority of the population who could have potentially literally, upend her entire rule. One hand. Two, though, she doesn't do it, then she's undermining her own authority and what she stands for and justice, real justice, because she believes in justice. She really does. Even if it's a skewed version of justice, she really believes that she's trying to bring rule and order and justice to this kingdom. So if someone kills someone who's under trial, that's wrong. That's not good. So she has to do it. But to do it in such a public forum seems almost it's definitely not popular. Do you think it was the right thing to do? I don't know. Honestly, this is not an easy answer. What do you guys think?
I don't know what other choice she had. She could have done it, secretly said, I killed him. I executed him because he did these things. This is not acceptable. That's probably what she should have done, honestly. But I don't know that would have changed the situation for her. Like I said, I think this was a long time coming, and it's probably not going to get any easier from here on out. It's an interesting problem. One of the interesting things in the scenes leading up to this that I thought was kind of funny was she goes on and on about how I think her words were something like they don't need masters, they have a queen or something like that. Kind of a hilarious thing. She basically just said, we're getting rid of all the slave owners and slave ownership, but you have to listen to every single thing I say. She's basically is the master of everyone at that point.
Yeah, her situation has definitely gotten even more complex than it already was. Because now she just has both sides mad at her now. The slaves are mad because she wasn't showing mercy because they thought she was the merciful mother. And she showed that she has another side to her. And then the masters are mad at her because they took over their city and they don't have slaves anymore. So, yeah, she's really in a tough spot right now.
Do you think she wins any points with the masters?
No.
No? Okay, you think she's already they've already made up their mind about her already?
Yeah.
Well, they don't need to. She's never going to win points with them because they want to be the ruling party. You don't have to pander to them.
And it was a slave. They don't care about him at all.
They are never going to be on your side.
It was really interesting to see how fast these slaves turned on her, though. Like, literally, it was like instantly.
They call her mother. Like, so to them, she just murdered one of her children.
Yep. Ouch. They were calling him brother, too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, she murdered their brother. Their mom killed the son. That's how they see it.
I've been looking at this and watching Daenerys thing. And last week we talked a little bit about the idea of, Western colonization of Daenerys kind of occupying and reading resources. And it really hit me this week while I'm kind of chewing on this episode, especially with the idea of the Sons of the Harpy, this underground sect of people who are attacking, but they're also blending in with, like, the everyday person, right? Like, we don't know who they are. I am seeing some, like, really noticeable parallels with the invasion of Iraq, right? So you've got, like, this... Daenerys, this great power, goes into the city and takes it over and says, hey, this is the way we're going to do things. This is the right way to do things. Well, in the meantime, you obviously have this sect of people who doesn't agree, and they fight from the underground. They go and they do, like, guerrilla-style attacks, trying to wean down the resources and the soldiers, but then they also blend in with the everyday population. I'm finding, and it's one of those things once I'm, like, thinking about, I'm like, wow, this parallel really seems to make a lot of sense. I mean, do you guys... have any thoughts on that at all? I do want to point out that George R. R. Martin would have been writing this book about the time we invaded Iraq and during the the occupation of Iraq. I mean, do you guys have any thoughts on that at all?
I 100% believe that was intentional, as like commentary on kind of what happens to a conquering country that comes in and tries to implement something that is contrary to a culture that is already existing. And Iraq's not the only example of this, obviously. I mean, you have Vietnam as like the classic example of this type of thing happening. Same sort of situation. You come in, you take it over, you have lots of insurgency, and a very similar issue. But for sure, I do believe that was an intentional kind of parallel. Well, and you try to work with the former ruling parties to try to create a semblance of culture, but they don't want to work with you. They just want to take it back over.
Right.
Which is exactly what is happening.
When you're also sort of bastardizing their own culture too. You know what I mean? Like saying, oh yeah, you're tearing down the very foundation. Yeah. I find it all very fascinating, and I'm sure it's intentional, but I think that's something interesting to read into if there are any of you listeners out there are into kind of looking at TV shows and literature through the lens of current events.
Kind of along those lines, there's definitely going to come very, very soon, and I don't know if it's probably not going to be Daenerys' own doing. Maybe Tyrion comes in and kind of helps her plan this out, but she's going to have to make a power play against the Masters because they are purposely undermining her at every chance they can get. She's got to do something about it, and I don't know what that's going to be. I have a feeling it's going to be brutal.
She's going to open the pits.
This really shows and starts to define who Daenerys is, at least at this point. Not that she can't become something else or change or grow into something different, but she is a fantastic conqueror. She can come in and she knows how to conquer, but she does not know how to lead or be a queen. And maybe that's something she can learn, but as of right now, all she knows how to do is conquer things. She doesn't know how to rebuild and lead things.
She is
and
trying
grow things.
To learn.
Right, and I'm not saying
others.
Yeah, she is trying, but she's not good at it yet, and she still has a lot to learn. And that's where someone like Tyrion could come in and help her, because even in their conversation with Varys, he said, you are a fantastic ruler for the small time that you were great at ruling. So he can bring that side that Daenerys is lacking and teach her and guide her in ways so that she can become the ruler that he knows how to be.
Well, I mean, listen, Tyrion would find a way to work with the Masters in a way that would make them happy while also letting Daenerys be the bold face that the former slaves would love to worship.
Do you think Stannis would be a good ruler?
No.
Varys doesn't think so.
No, listen, I maintain that Stannis would not be a good ruler. I think in a sense he's like the law, right?
The law!
If you remove Melisandre from the situation, he's fair, but he's cold, he's calculated. He doesn't inspire. No one wants to follow someone. Nobody wants to follow someone like that. Does anyone, nobody likes rule. I mean, it's like Richard Nixon, for example. I mean, and while I would argue Richard Nixon was a decent president, nobody liked him. He was not like a guy, like, no one united behind Richard Nixon. I mean, despite his obvious, shenanigans going on. Like, I think if you look back at his policies, yeah, a lot of great stuff got done. But no one wanted. I mean, he won the election, but no one liked him. No one looks back on Nixon and said, "Man, that's a guy I believe in." For example, right? That's how Stannis is. Like, I'm not saying he would do a terrible job, but no one likes him. And with a country like Westeros that so desperately needs an inspiring ruler to unite it behind, all 7 kingdoms behind one person, if it's going to survive the winter. You have to have someone that inspires love and hope. And Stannis just can't. He doesn't have that in him.
So is Daenerys John Kennedy?
Yeah, Daenerys is John F. Kennedy, and Stannis is Richard Nixon. There you go.
Hope that ends up better for her than it did for JFK.
I think, Daniel, you hit the nail on the head. This is the time where it's defining what kind of leader, what kind of ruler Daenerys is going to be. It's one thing to go in and up in a culture and free some slaves, but it's another thing to actually clean up the mess and show people how to do things the right way. But one last Daenerys scene, the great way to end Game of Thrones is we got dragons, or a dragon, I should say. Drogon returned and didn't really do anything, but kind of showed us that, hey, he's still around, and Daenerys is feeling a little heartbroken right now.
Most importantly, he didn't eat her, so that's a good sign.
He didn't eat her. That is a good sign. Absolutely. Not chomping down and burning her to crisp. That's a good sign. I agree.
Because the other 2 dragons tried to eat her.
Well, Drogon's been free and flying around and not trapped in an underground cavern. So.
Yeah, just eating kids and stuff. Nothing, no big deal.
So he's fine. Yeah.
both kids. That's kind of a double entendre because it's both goats and children.
There were actually children in there too. Obviously, they're kind of like her. I don't know, like her weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, right? They're kind of like her secret weapon or whatever. they're kind of hanging out there, but she doesn't know how to use them. She doesn't know what to do with them, and she's afraid if she uses them, bad things could happen. But she wants them, but they aren't really within her. And unlike WMDs, they're totally out of her control.
And no one can find them.
And that was good. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. So many political jokes I'm not sure allowed to be in the show. Well, guys, that was a fun discussion. Love talking about it. House of Black and White, I think, was a great episode, a great follow-up. I think I liked it better than last week, even though I thought last week was a great start. The ball rolling this week. We had a lot of stuff, maybe a little too much going on, and I'm not saying it was flawless, but lots of great stuff going on this episode. And Dany's storyline really got to the core of why I like Game of Thrones. It relates to contemporary issues. It's a moral challenge. It's a question of morality for the characters, and ultimately it's going to challenge growth and Daenerys one way or the other. So that's very, very exciting to see. I think it's time. We've recapped the heck out of this episode. Let's go ahead and prehash next week's episode, High Sparrow.
You loved your family. Avenge them.
You, who walk in here with a coin you never earned. Who are you?
What do you want from us?
Justice.
You have many enemies in Castle Black.
And you're prepared for the consequences. All men must serve.
Okay, so the quick little synopsis here this week is, in Braavos, Arya sees the many-faced god. In King's Landing, Queen Marjorie enjoys, wink wink, her new husband. Husband, I guess that means she's getting married.
Wait, say that again?
Queen Marjorie enjoys her new husband.
Interesting.
So apparently she's married.
That's really interesting.
So I guess that's going to happen fast. Yeah.
We need to kick Austin off and talk. I'm just like...
I mean, clearly. I thought weddings in Game of Thrones are always an epic event, though. I mean, apparently it's just going to happen like that. I don't know. Or she's going to marry some other dude in secret. Oh, I love this one. Tyrion and Varys walk the long bridge of Atlantis. Wow, guys. Man, I feel like I know a whole lot about next week's episode. We're going to see Tyrion and Varys walk across a bridge.
Look, Tyrion's been wanting to walk. So
bridges are scary, man.
His chance.
We do know what happened to the bridges at the Twins. That was bad news. So what do you guys think? I mean, apparently this wedding looks like it's going to be a non-event if she's getting married to her new husband. I don't really know.
Yeah, I wonder if that's miswritten.
I don't
honestly.
know. Man. That's I don't know what's going on with that.
So we can't have a pink wedding. We've had a red wedding and a purple wedding. It's time for pink, yellow weddings, maybe.
I don't know.
Blue.
I'm a
weddings.
little skeptical about that portion of it. I think the most notable part, though, is, and if you've seen the trailer, is we're gonna really dig into Arya's new storyline, and I'm super excited about it.
Oh yeah,
me too.
What exactly is going on inside the House of Black and White, guys? What is going on in there? I mean, Austin, do you have any ideas?
They're training people to murder. What else do you need? That's it. That's all you do.
Nobody knows what's going on in there.
Okay, cool. Other question I have is I one little bit. I thought it seemed like we might be getting a reveal next week of where Sansa's going, finally, because we still don't know where she's going. Do you guys have any ideas on that yet? I mean, have you thought about this past week to think, hey, maybe where's Sansa going?
Well, they took off in a hurry in this episode.
They did. They no longer have any soldiers.
Because Brienne cut them in half, literally.
I have no idea where they're going.
No idea. I have no idea either.
I still think he's gonna go see Walder Frey.
Walder Frey. Maybe Walder Frey. I don't know that. I just don't. What benefit to Walder Frey? And I'm still thinking, well, they're in the north, sort of. Maybe they're going to Winterfell because they haven't been to Winterfell yet. But I'm like, why? Why would they ever send her there? Because it's freaking occupied by Boltons. That seems like a terrible idea. That'd be an awful idea. Yeah, so I don't know. But hopefully we find out next week. I really would like to find out next week where we're going. And it also looks like, I'm mentioning the Boltons, that we are going to get to catch up with the Boltons finally in 3 episodes. You know, we might find out what happened to Theon, Reek, Greyjoy, whatever's going on with that dude, maybe.
The poor Greyjoys.
They'll come back one day, Austin, one day.
But not today.
Not today. Or next week. or the week after that, or the week after that, or the week after that. But they're coming. They're coming.
Just like winter.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to our recap review of the House of Black and White. I just want to remind everybody, you're probably listening through this little website called We Get This Covered. They are an excellent source of gaming, TV, and movie news. There's a lot of great stuff coming out on the website. I believe that you should probably keep your eyes peeled. There's probably a little Age of Ultron review coming out very soon. I'd highly recommend you check that out because, guys, it's kind of the biggest event of the summer. I mean, let's be honest here. Are we all going to see Age of Ultron?
Yeah, probably.
Check out the reviews there. And, of course, you can always find us on... and, of course, you can always support us more than any other way you can support us. Please go and subscribe on iTunes and give us a rating. Go hit that 5-star button. Be like, man, this is the best Game of Thrones podcast out there. Love what these guys are doing. I love what they're saying. Bam, give us a review. And if you really like us, give us a little review. Even if it says everything is awesome, everything is cool when we're part of a team, just write that in there and put it on the review. Because we're all on this together, guys, on a team, right?
That was lame.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. And of course, you can also find our we keep our updates. We update multiple times a week on our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/castbeyondthewall, and we post, of course, our latest episodes as well as a lot of little fun little news stories and fun little fan projects you see online on there as well. And you can also follow us on Twitter at cast_beyond_GOT. Thank you, Daniel and Austin, for tuning in yet again to review Game of Thrones. We'll be back next week when we review High Sparrow. You won't want to miss it. I had to personally call George R. R. Martin myself and be like, listen, man, what's the deal here? What's the deal?
He's going to be like, I have no idea what's going on anymore.
Well,
that's what George R. R. Martin.
He said, shut up, I'm still trying to learn the next version of DOS so I can finish my book. That's what he told me.
Winter has been coming for a long time because Bran went from being 4 foot tall to like 80 feet tall. So apparently you get like a lot of warning before this actually occurs.
Don't you know that whenever winter is coming, it jacks with your messes with your pituitary gland and it makes you grow tall. I mean, it affected Sansa, affected Bran, Arya. I mean, come on, guys, winter's coming.